Hi everyone, it's Lindsay and I'm back today to share with you 6 different cards using one digital stamp set. So for the majority of my video, I'm going to be working in Photoshop Elements and I'm always opening up A2 size panels. So they're 4¼ by 5½. Now for this one, I'm actually going to go up to Image and rotate it 90 degrees so it's horizontal. I just like to do it this way because I have a preset of an A2 panel already in my files. So I just pull it up and rotate it. You can open it up horizontally if you wanted to. So I'm going to be using the Bedroom Accessories digital stamp set for all of my cards today. This is from Craft and Desert Divas. Now they not only have the bedroom accessories, they also have kitchen accessories and living room accessories. Now these retail for $4.99. However, you get so many different images. You not only get your JPEGs and your PNG images too, you also get colored versions in JPEG and PNG format as well. So you're getting 4 different options to use of many different images. So $4.99 isn't that bad, and I wanted to show you 6 different cards you could do with one stamp set within this kind of accessories line that Craft and Desert Divas has. So I went ahead and brought in the bed PNG image. Then I brought in the side table. And I went ahead and just duplicated that image and moved it over to the left and right hand side of the bed. Now I'm going to be doing a few different layouts on each one of these tables. And as I'm adding more images to this sort of scene that I'm creating here, I'm having to change up the order on the right hand side. So you can see I've got all my layers on the right hand side. You're going to need to play around with the order whenever you do a scene like this. And each time I'm just going up to File and clicking the place button and bringing in different images to add into my scene. Now for this particular image, I went ahead and brought in the lamp. I went ahead and brought it up to the top as well. Now I want it to be a little bit smaller, so I went ahead and resized it, but I want this on the left hand and right hand side, so I'm going to actually duplicate this image as well. So once I get the layer right and the size and everything exactly where I want it, I'm actually going to go up to the lamp layer and I'll just duplicate that by right clicking on it, duplicate layer. It brings up an exact copy in the exact size that I have the other one as well. Then I'll use my arrow keys on my keyboard to push it over to the right hand side, but I want to flip this layer horizontally, and what that's going to do is it's actually going to put that light string on the other side, so it doesn't look like I've used the same image over and over again on this panel. It gives it a little bit of a different look, makes it more symmetrical. So that's just a way you can get more out of these stamps, is to flip them, resize them, adjust them as you want. Now I also added the little alarm clock on that right hand side table, and then I'm going to bring in the window. So I go up to File and I click Place, and you can see as I just scroll through all of these images how many you actually have to choose from. So I grab that window PNG, click the Place button, and then I'm going to resize it to just be a little bit smaller, and I want this behind all of my other layers, so it's going to be on the very bottom. And once I have that exactly where I want it, I just click that green arrow. Now, whenever I do big scenes like this, there are times when I want them to fill up the whole panel, or they're not quite centered once I'm done with them. So I like to grab all of the layers that I've placed, control and click on each one of the layers that I want, and then I can move them all together. So I don't have to go in and move each one individually. And that really saves a lot of time. You can also resize them the same way, and that saves a lot of time too. So if you want to make them a little bit bigger to fill up the entire panel, or a little bit smaller to make more room for other objects, you can do that as well in one big go, and everything stays symmetrical. Now I also added a little shelf in the top right hand corner, just the smallest shelf that is in the set. And then I'm also going to go in and add the little cat right on top of the bed. So I click the Place button. I brought my cat into the images. Now I'm going to resize him just so he fits on the bed nicely. And I played around with the placement a little bit because at this point I wasn't sure if I wanted them on the left side, the right side. I finally decided on the left side because it kind of balanced out that one shelf in the top right hand corner. But I thought about the floor, different areas you could place him in. You could even place him on the little windowsill behind the window if I didn't have the bed in front. Tons of different options, and because these are so easy to go in and move the placement, you get a lot of playtime and really just a lot of second guessing yourself, so you can play around with the placement a lot more with your digital stamps. Now to finish this off, I printed this off with my laser printer, colored in the entire image with my alcohol markers, cut it down to an A2 size panel, and mounted it onto a side folding A2 white card base. Now I didn't add any sentiment to this. You could add a congratulations on your new home sentiment, birthday sentiment, hello, get well soon, whatever you needed this for, you could use that card for. It's one of those any occasion type of cards. Here's a few closer looks at the finished card, and now I'm going to move on to the next card. And for this card, again, I started out with an A2 panel working in Photoshop Elements. Now for this one, I'm going to create a scene. It's going to be different, but I'm actually going to go in and die cut this scene once I'm finished printing it out. So the first thing I started out with was the little dresser in the set. Now this is different from the side table. It has more drawers and it's a larger object. So this is the dresser where you would keep your clothes. So I went ahead and put that right in the middle of my panel. And then I'm just going to add little elements on top. So I've got this little cactus and I'm going to place him on the left hand side. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and move this and play around with the size until I'm happy with it. Now once I have the cactus on, I'm going to go back up to File, click Place again. And I'm really in love with the books and the little coffee cups. So I'll go ahead and use that on this scene as well. So again, I just place that on my image. I do need to go into my layers and bring that up to the top so it's in front of the dresser. And I place that on the right hand side. Now, whenever you're going in and you're moving around with your placement, if you're moving it a long ways, you can go ahead and use your mouse. But if you just need to move it a smidge, just use your arrow keys on your keyboard to move it here and there, and that will really allow you more precise placement. Now I'm also going to bring in the lamp. Again, I'm bringing that layer to the top, and I do want it behind the cups and the books. So I'm actually going to go and drag it right back down behind that books layer and move it over to the left hand side a little bit. And this is a way to get really great scenes without having to do all the masking. This is more of do all your work on the computer, then you can sit in front of the TV and color in all your image panels, put them on a card base, and you're good to go with these cards. Now above all of this dresser that I had created, I wanted to put a little shelf. So I have the larger shelf that has more of the books and the plan on it. And as you can see, I grabbed all of the dresser and all the elements on top of it with that Control Shift, held on to them and moved them down on this panel. And then I went ahead and placed that shelf right above it. Now I can go ahead and grab all of those elements and resize them so they fit onto this panel a little better. And I also measured my die, the inside of my die that I knew I would be using. So I knew I needed it a certain size to fit inside of my die cut. So I went ahead and resized it as I needed to. And then once I'm happy with it, I'll go down to my background panel, right click on it, flatten my image, and then I went ahead and printed this one. I didn't print with crop marks because, like I said, I did use the Crazy Stitched Frames die set from Craft and Desert Divas, the largest rectangle I used to cut out that panel. I colored this in with my alcohol markers, used the Congrats stamp from the Simply Said stamp set with black dye ink, and popped this entire panel onto an A2 top folding white card base. Now I didn't add any dimension here. You could if you wanted to. You could also add some different sequins to dress this up, but I kept mine very clean and simple for the finishing card. So for my next card, I'm going to do a little something different. I've made 2 scene cards, but now I'm going to move on and actually use 2 stamps over and over again to just create a nice simple card. So for this, I started with an A2 panel. I went ahead and rotated it so it's longer horizontally. Then I'm going to bring in the cactus digital stamps in this set. So I'm starting with the single one with the little flower on top, and I've just placed that right in the center of my panel after I've sized it down a little bit. Now there's also another cactus with little elements coming off of both sides, but it doesn't have the little flower on top. So I'm actually going to put this one after I size it down on the right hand side. Once I have that where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and click the green arrow. Then I'll go over to my layers tab on the right hand side, go ahead and duplicate that layer, and I'm going to move this over to the left hand side of that center cactus. Now this is where I'm going to go into that image panel. I'm going to flip the layer horizontally. Now I've got the mirror image on the left hand side. And flipping these layers, you can flip them horizontally. You can also flip them vertically if you wanted to do it that way. And that just gives you a really great variety in using the same stamp over and over. Nobody's going to know that you did. So I duplicated that center layer next, and I went ahead and brought this to the right hand side, and then I will go ahead and duplicate that again and move that one over to the very far left hand side. So what I'm essentially doing here is creating a strip of cactuses across this panel. Now I will cut this down eventually, but right now I just want to create this on the computer, and then I'll print and do all the work afterwards. So I went ahead and I'm going to go ahead and just play around with the placement of these, the size a little bit. Just make sure they're centered and even. And I'm also going to make sure that the bottom of the little planters they're in are all even as well. So again, I printed that off my laser printer, and then I just cut this strip down to about 2.5 inches. I added a black panel behind that, popped that up, added some Ranger enamel accents and black tie, stamped that thank you from Simply Said, right in some black dye ink, and I also colored in all of my images with my alcohol markers, and I picked the colors of the little planters they're in from the actual CDD mood board challenge. So I went ahead and grabbed the colors from that and used that to decide the colors for all those little planters. Here's a closer look at that finished card as well. And again, I use this as a thank you card, but it's another card you could use for whatever occasion you need a card for. So moving on to my next card, again, same thing, A2 panel that's going horizontally, and then I'm going to start placing some of my objects from my bedroom accessories stamp set right on here. Now I'm only going to place one this time, and that is the window. So I went ahead and placed that down. I'm going to enlarge it so it fills up the majority of the panel. Go ahead and click that green button, the green little arrow on the right. I thought about adding a few more elements here, decided against it, so that is really going to finish this off. I'll go over to my background layer once I'm happy with the size. I'll flatten this image out, print it off with my laser printer, and then I will begin the work on my finished card. So I colored off that image and then fussy cut it out. Now behind that window, I also cut out the little window panes. I added some die cuts from the Scene Builders die and the Landscape Borders 2 die set. Popped the little hug sentiment right in the top right hand corner from the Simply Set stamp set. I mounted that entire little scene that I created onto an A2 white side folding card base that I created, and I also put down a panel of designer paper to kind of mimic the appearance of wallpaper, and that finished off that card. There's a look at that finished card. And again, this is just a look at something different you can do with your digital stamps and mixing it along with your die cuts and your regular stamps as well. So there you can see I just finished up that really quick on this section, but then I'm going to go ahead and open up a new panel, again A2 size, and for this card I'm just going to be placing one image as well. Now I used this image before in my first card, it's the alarm clock image, but I'm going to go ahead and use it on this card as well. It's just going to be a little bit larger. Another great thing about your digital stamps, you can resize them as you want. So on my first card, I made this alarm clock very tiny to fit in with my scene. Now on this card, it's actually going to be the main focal point. So I dropped it in the bottom right-hand corner, made it very large, and that's going to fill up my panel. Now once I'm happy with kind of the placement, because I'm actually going to die cut this later on, so it doesn't have to be perfect, more so the size I want right. Once I'm happy with the size, I'll go over to my background layer, right click on it, flatten it out, and then I'll print this off again with my laser printer with no crop marks because I am die cutting. So I went ahead and die cut that with the fancy frames, the large scallop rectangle in that die set, and I also used a circle die just to pop out that center of the clock. Now, I went ahead and made this into a little shaker after I colored it in with my alcohol markers. I used the Emerald Isle sequins from Craft and Desert Divas for my shaker part. And then I popped the happy birthday sentiment in the top right hand corner with some black dye ink. And that sentiment is from the Simply Said stamp set. So whenever you're looking at your digital stamps, don't just think of how you can create scenes with them and that kind of thing. That's fun. But look at how you can make them interactive and use them with your die cuts and different things like that to really get more creative with them and to get different looks out of them to really stretch your crafting dollar. So for my next card, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm opening up an A2 size panel. I am using it horizontally again, and this time I'm just going to be using 2 of the shelves. So this is going to be more of my clean and simple style of card. So I'm using that very large shelf that's in the stamp set. I have moved that into the top left-hand corner, and then I'm going to bring in the smaller shelf that I used on my first card as well. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. Now in this scenario, I do want the shelves to look like they are cohesive and they're on the same wall. So I do need to be worried about the size a little bit here. Not so much the placement because again, I'm going to be die cutting these, but once I get them to almost the same size here, the width of the shelves pretty close together, once I'm happy with that and with the way they're centered on each other, I'm going to go ahead and go over to my background layer and flatten it out. Now I printed that off again with my laser printer, and I used that same fancy frames die set from Craft and Desert Divas. I used this stitched rectangle to go ahead and die cut that. Now I colored that in with my alcohol markers very quickly. I used the Wishful Thought stamp set for my sentiment on this one, and then I just mounted that onto a large scalloped rectangle that I cut with that same die set and popped those 2 panels onto an A2 side folding card base to finish off this very clean and simple card. So there you have it, 6 different cards with 1 digital stamp set, each one of them different from the other. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, I'm going to leave you with pictures of the finished cards. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a few different links you can click on. The top will take you to a video that you might enjoy watching next. The bottom left will take you to the supply list for this card set, and the bottom right will subscribe you to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!